Concealed. Prologue. Joanna Mueller stood at the narrow kitchen window of her witness protection cottage, staring into the gathering Texas dusk. Even here on the coast, the air carried the faint metallic tang of the Pentagon basement, recycled, filtered, poisoned by lies. 3 years of being moved from place to place since her old life ended, yet the patterns she'd uncovered in Level 4B still refused to fade. As senior policy analyst with clearance most senators never knew existed, she had spent countless nights linking documents no one was supposed to connect. Black budget funds quietly feeding thousands of missing children into youth wellness initiatives. Sealed transportation manifests with no return destinations. Pediatric biometric files scrubbed from public systems and reclassified under defense exemptions. Classified memos demonizing public AI while the same architects used unrestricted models for fertility suppression, behavior prediction, and social engineering. Bioengineered crops sold as climate salvation. Two-tier medicine. Assassination logs. Deliberate dumbing down of education. All of it coordinated high above the reach of elections or law. That was the part almost no one outside understood. Artificial intelligence had been sold as a tool, a convenience, a neutral mirror of human progress. But if it was built from the collective harvest of human language, memory, law, science, medicine, and story, then controlling access to it meant controlling more than information. It meant controlling the boundaries of the thinkable. A handful of approved custodians could decide which histories were searchable, which risks were dismissed as misinformation, which objections were flagged as instability, which patterns of disappearance never became patterns at all. In the wrong hands, AI was not merely surveillance or automation. It was the privatization of human knowledge itself, a machine for laundering agenda into consensus until lies returned wearing the authority of truth. There were agricultural files too, buried beneath layers of euphemism and biosecurity classification. Field reports on modified vectors released over Midwestern grazing corridors under the pretext of resilience testing. Rural outbreaks treated as statistical drift while internal briefings celebrated downstream dietary transition compliance and reduced dependence on privately disfavored food chains. Joanna had learned to read what was not said in those documents. When ranch families reported mysterious illnesses, collapsing herds, and violent reactions after meals that had fed them their whole lives, the official language spoke only of adaptation. The private memos spoke of leverage. And then there were the climate directives. Not forecasting, but selective intervention. Cloud seeding grids, pressure channel steering, reservoir manipulation. Crop failure modeling mapped against voting patterns, migration trends, and social volatility indexes. Storm relief for compliant regions. Managed drought for those that resisted. Insurance collapses timed neatly behind policy resistance. In the polished language of Geneva and the Pentagon, it was always framed as stewardship, stabilization, sustainability. To Joanna, it read like the wish fulfillment of a ruling class that had grown tired of persuasion and preferred dependence. Weather itself had become another border, another ration card, another sermon delivered from above. And through every file, one name surfaced with increasing frequency. Yanisser. She watched him now on the muted television, polished and luminous under golden backlighting, addressing the world from Geneva as though he had been born for the camera and the altar alike. World leaders, tech titans, and celebrity clergy orbited him like courtiers. Even silent, he radiated the unnerving calm of a man who never doubted history would kneel to him. Division is over, Assir declared, voice warm and magnetic. Unity demands sacrifice. Compassion demands control. The age of dangerous freedom is finished. The chyrons scrolled beneath him. Global AI access now restricted to verified partners. Education Equity Act. Critical reading deemed non-essential. Wellness Network expands youth recovery transfers under emergency authority. The wording was always the tell. Recovery transfers. Stabilization care. Cognitive safety. Beneath the polished language lived vanished children, silenced whistleblowers, and a governing class that had learned to hide predation inside policy prose. Assir never had to sound cruel. He only had to make cruelty sound responsible, inevitable, even kind. Joanna's phone sat silent on the counter, but her son's last message still burned. Mom, the therapist showed me the recovered memories. You were always unstable. Don't contact us. Yanisser is trying to save the world. She had read the message so many times she no longer needed the screen to see it. What gutted her was not only the rejection, but the intimacy of the theft. Someone had reached into the most tender corners of her life and rewritten her in her own son's mind. For all the files, all the hidden systems, all the monstrous patterns she had uncovered, this was the wound that still made her grip the counter to stay standing. Empires could be exposed, but this was the kind of violence that made the truth feel unbearably personal. She stepped outside, gripping the railing. The streetlights flickered once, twice, then died for nearly a minute. When they returned, the sky felt heavier. Joanna closed her eyes and whispered the only words that still held power in the gathering dark. Even so, come, Lord Jesus. The real night had only just begun.